Very good evening to everybody, and welcome to this next in our live stream series. This is Christopher Dygan coming to you from our home in KwaZulu-Natal on Wednesday, the 3rd of November 2021. This is the next in our program of concerts and our program of live streams, bringing you an interesting and enjoyable, hopefully uplifting, positive and peaceful selection of music. And tonight in our Wednesday piano hour, Wednesday is always a little bit less formal and something a bit fun and hopefully a little bit interesting. And I have a really fascinating program for you tonight that I have thrown caution to the wind. Anything can happen. I'm playing a very varied program that is really focusing around some research and ideas that I've put together. Some of the music is very new to me, like as though yesterday new to me. So if some of the performances or some of the pieces that I'm playing go horribly wrong, hopefully they won't break down completely. Bear with me. We can always try again because I think it's a fascinating program. So once again, if you're able to support me, I'm very grateful for any support that does come through financially. You'll find all the links at our website. It really keeps me working and keeps these streams going, which you do, of course, cost, even though they are coming out to the broader community around the world free of charge. So in this evening's program, Play Piano Play, I try to look at music from around the world, and rather than a program of popular favorites or music that I know in my memory, I try to do some research and come up with some different ideas and explore the possibilities of what the piano has to offer, because it is so varied, it is vast. I'm once again in tonight's program absolutely astounded at how much music, amazing and wonderful music there is out there. I started off by looking at some possibilities of one or two pieces that I was going to play. And as I said, Play Piano Play, I always try to exploit various aspects of the piano. And I started thinking about, well, why does this program of tango and ragtime and classics and full music, why does it work so well? Because there's so many balances, to me it seems. The music comes from different styles, but also just in terms of what one is hearing, there's jagged rhythms of ragtime, there's the strict rhythms of tango, beautiful melodies of classical music, the brilliance of some of the romantic piano virtuoso music, and these beautiful, ethereal, contemporary piano sounds that I play sometimes, as well as some of the improvisations. So it's really a range of different colors and a range of different rhythms and textures that all come together, and in that hour of music, they create wonderful contrasts. And I thought, well, let me try to explore this and try to see if I can contrast some extremes and introduce music and play pieces that are going to define particular aspects. And so that is what I'm doing tonight. So I've really had to look for some interesting new music. As I say, I'm playing some music that I've never played before. I've never saw it until yesterday, but I thought this is going to be a good inclusion. So once again, if anything does go wrong, just look the other way. Just pretend it doesn't happen. And of course, this is the type of program, I think, that actually over time I will be able to develop and probably get to know some of the music and add bits into a really interesting concert program. So I'm going to start off, I'm going to be presenting the pieces in four. Barry's going to bring up the titles, and there's some interesting images as well. And the first one has an interesting image. I am starting with a very exuberant piece of music by Scott Joplin, and I'm going to go this way because I think the image is going to come up. As I've mentioned before, Scott Joplin always has some very interesting images on his covers of his music. They were always published as individual pieces. And here is the album, the page cover for Scott Joplin's New Rag. What a great title. Scott Joplin's New Rag, he calls it. And interestingly enough, you see that it's a very contemporary, sort of almost Art Deco style that he creates, or that's created on that cover. And this is a very exuberant piece of music. It's very positive. It's got all that ragtime energy. What's unusual about it is that with most of the ragtimes that I play, there's a sequence of melodies. Oh, I've just disappeared. A sequence of melodies that start off, and you have a sequence of melodies that follow each other and nothing returns. But with this particular Scott Joplin's New Rag, he does something a little bit different. The opening melody comes back at the end. So what you hear at the beginning then returns as a repeat or a reprise at the end of the piece. And there's a very interesting, jaunty little last 2 or 3 bars, little moment, which I think is so fun and so cute. A piece of music that really defines a sense of energy and joy and vibrance. If we have to contrast that with music of great sadness, we need to look no further than the music of the Russian composers, and in particular Peter Ilyich Tchaikovsky. And this is his Nocturne. He composed a set of 6 piano pieces, and this was a very beautiful Nocturne which he later transcribed and rewrote for cello. Very languid, very sorrowful, really serious emotion that he produces in that. I then move on to something which is a little bit different, a little bit of different contrast, the idea of authenticity. Now, I'm going to play 2 pieces, one by Carl Philipp Emanuel Bach, the son of the great J.S. Bach, and then the very famous Tico Tico. And what these 2 pieces I'm going to demonstrate and try and show you is in the Carl Philipp Emanuel Bach, in this time of the early 18th century that he was writing, he wrote actually a very interesting volume about the correct performance of the time, of how performers should interpret and correctly play music. And one of the ideas about this is that often what was written on the page was merely an outline for what performers were expected to actually produce. And even in this little piece of music, the line that he writes, which is that's what he writes down. But I'm going to play something, and which is what I think he would have expected, would be adding in extra notes, adding in little ornaments, little interjections between to create something stylistically correct, and also that is what he would have expected at the time. However, the version that I'm going to play is not really accurate. It almost is inauthentic. It's written down in almost a romantic style. It's so full of details. So I would say that's an inauthentic style, but a real authentic style of the original music of Tico Tico, this famous song which was made famous by people like Carmen Miranda and the Andrew Singers with English lyrics as opposed to the original Portuguese lyrics. I'm playing for you the original piano version as Mr. Abreu, Zaquino Abreu, wrote it down, I think in 1917. This is the original version. You'll hear slightly different rhythms and slightly different outlines and a different structure of the piece, the way the sections hang together that we often know from the North American versions, but this is the original South American version from the Brazilian composer, Zaquino Abreu. So first of all, we're having a piece by Scott Joplin, some Tchaikovsky, some Carl Philipp Emanuel Bach, and then Tico Tico to end off our first section. choro, the delightful popular choro Tico Tico no Fuba by Zekina Abru. Ended that section of 4 pieces. I started off with a very exciting and jubilant, joyous Scott Joplin rag, followed by Tchaikovsky's Nocturne, C-sharp minor. So a little bit of a mishap at the end. I did warn you a few things would go wrong, but I'm sure I'll get a chance to try that beautiful piece again. That was representing the melancholy or great sorrow. 2 pieces that are then played by C.P.E. Bach, Carl Philipp Emanuel Bach, created in a non-authentic style, in a sort of romanticized style, you might say, around the original early 18th century music, but then the authentic original style of Tico Tico as presented by Zekino Abreu himself. My second selection of pieces then, I'm going to go on to contrasting moods of fun. I thought, well, what is the most fun, exuberant, apart from the brightness of Scott Joplin, fun and joyous piece of music I can think of? And I came back to, of course, the tangos of Julian Plaza, and I'll play one of his tangos called the Nocturne. I think it has such an incredibly exciting rhythm and jaunt to it. And of course, someone else who's incredibly excited to be here tonight is Little Lucy. And Little Lucy's already coming. Hello, Little Lucy. How's everything today? Oh yes, it's just smashing. You've been sitting outside and it's nice and warm. The frogs are croaking. You can hear the frogs creaking, and little tree frogs creaking in the reed frogs, at least I think they are. Barry will correct me. Creaking, yes, you can hear them, but you also want to be here. Hello, Luce. Everything's fine? Yes, thank you very much. You can come back later on. Off you go into your basket. And straight after that, a fun piece by Julian Plaza, the tango, then the Nocturne. I'm going to go on to a piece of melancholic music by a composer that I've never heard of or discovered before until a few days ago, Mr. Cervantes, a Cuban composer, and this is a very melancholic piece, Adios, Cuba. And really expressing that sorrow and that loss of leaving your homeland and leaving your hometown, I think. Straight on to 2 ideas, something which is very simple and charming, contrasted with something very fiery. And for a very simple piece, I'm going to play a really such a delicate and gentle and unpretentious kind of innocence to the music, piece by Gabriel Fauré, one of his 3 romances without words. The third of the 3, and then a piece which is incredibly fiery. I thought something which was really driven and had great enthusiasm and gusto, ironically coming from the 18th century harpsichord writing of Domenico Scarlatti, and one of his many, many sonatas, this one in D minor. So, for the selection of 4 pieces, a tango by Plaza, a melancholic piece by Cervantes, then the music of Fauré in a very simple, charming context, and Scarlatti to end off with a fiery brilliance. Scarlatti to end that section there. Who says that Scarlatti wasn't a brilliant genius, an amazing keyboard player, virtuoso keyboard player? That's really quite a thing to play music like. It's just relentless. So 1,000 notes. I feel like I'm playing 1,000 notes this evening alone. So that section, I started off with a Nocturne by the Argentine tango composer Julian Plaza, and then I went on to Adios, Cuba by Cervantes, Gabriel Fauré's beautiful Romance Without Words, and the Scarlatti Sonata. I'm going to move on to two very charming little pieces of music, which are quite contrasted, quite different to what I've played before. One of them quite well known, in fact both very well known, should I say. Familiar but not well known actually what they are. The first by the Russian composer Anatoly Lyadov, the snuff box, the musical snuff box. The idea that you'll hear in the top part of the piano this little mechanical motion of the music going round in circle, little box where you open up and the ballet dancer pops up and plays a charming tune on this tiny little bell-like instrument inside the box. And then straight after that, a composition by the French composer Charles Gounod, who's very famous for, well, a huge amount of music, particularly for the Ave Maria, the melody that he composes over Bach's opening prelude of the 48 Prelude and Fugues, which you all know. This is what Bach wrote. And then Gounod writes on top of that. So that's why you always see it's Ave Maria, Bach, Gounod. Bach wrote one part, 150 years later or so, Gounod wrote another part added on. But this particular piece of his, the March, or the Funeral March of the Marionette, I think is particularly charming. Barry's going to bring up the front cover image, and in the music it describes how the marionette, first of all, dies. There's a death, and then there's great sorrow before the funeral march itself starts. Very delicate, toy-like atmosphere. And in the middle, this is the second part of the image, which you'll see on the screen, that the image there on the right-hand side with the music. It says, at this point, the attendees of the funeral retire for some liquid refreshment and drinks, and much happiness ensues. Of course, liquid refreshment will uplift anyone and certainly lift anyone's spirits, and the march becomes very happy before the original music returns. So there are a number of little details written into the music, which is quite interesting, about how the marionette, the funeral takes place and the party ensues before they return home. After that, I'm going to go on to a neglected part from those two rather charming little pieces, a neglected part of the repertoire. I thought, well, what part of the repertoire am I not looking at and is not often heard, and should I be bringing to attention? And so I'm going to play the music of two female composers this evening, the first of which we've got an image of Marianne Martinez, Viennese composer whose father was Spanish, and her brother apparently served in the court, Emperor of Austria, so they had became the nobility with the prefix of von, so it became Marianne von Martinez, a rather complex name, I guess. But this is a beautiful little piece of sonata that she wrote. Her dates will come up on the piece of music that I play. And the second piece by the famous Polish harpsichord player and pianist Wanda Landowska. This is a beautiful Berceuse, Berceuse being a cradle song, or a song to lull babies or people to sleep. And Landowska is very well known as the harpsichordist who was the first person, Bach's original instruments and music, the music of Bach's and Scarlatti time, written on the harpsichord. We now play it on the piano. And in the early 20th century, she revived this idea of playing on the harpsichord. Harpsichords were seen as very old-fashioned and people had largely forgot about them. And she started reviving this in the original sense, bringing the original sound back that Bach would have heard. For quite a different harpsichord she eventually ended up playing, a very grand, modernized harpsichord, but certainly it was a start of this very interesting idea of trying to get back to the authenticity of what 17th century music sounded like on the right instruments. And famously, she was in an argument with another pianist who were arguing about the details of Bach, and the pianist was saying, yeah, but you must play like this, and this articulation, and this ornamentation, and eventually she stopped him and she says, you play Bach your way, I'll play Bach his way, meaning because she was playing on the harpsichord, she had certainly the advantage of the authentic style that she was reaching. But this Wanda Landowska, her Berceuse, a very charming little piece of music there. I think, sorry Barry, I mixed those around. So I'm starting off with the Liadoff, the snuff box, the March of the Marionette, the funeral march of the Marionette, then Landowska, and ending off with the Marianne von Martinez. So I got those two mixed up, but I'm sure the images and the titles will come up in the right place. Selection of 4 pieces there. I ended off with the sonata by the woman composer Marianne Martinez, or Martinez, 17th century, 18th century composer, and before the 20th century composer and famous harpsichordist Wanda Landowska from Poland, and her Berceuse, or cradle song. I started off that selection of 4 pieces, however, then with 2 rather charming and quite fun little pieces of music. I thought the musical Snuff Box by Anatoly Lyudov, Russian composer, and also the Funeral March of the Marionette by Charles Gounod, along with the appropriate markings to be refreshed and revived by refreshments. Yeah, I'm sure Lucy and little Luce, and here's Frida Pop. Frida Pop is probably wanting to be revived by... Frida, are you wanting to be revived by refreshments? No, you're just wanting a hug because you've had your dinner and you've had all the refreshments you need for the day. Oh, Frida, you're so sweet. Little Frida Pop, sweet doggy. And Luce, you want to come back up? Yes? No, Lucy's got a big waggy tail. Okay. Luce, how's everything going, Lucy? Dare we ask what you did today? Well, nothing. I don't think you did anything. I think you've been the whole day in bed. Yes, it's been a beautiful, clear spring day. It's been quite warm. The frogs are creaking. Yes, the frogs are very loud tonight. And it's just been beautiful. There have been monkeys to chase and a nice bed to sleep in and sun to lie in and Frida to snuggle with. Yes, it's just been delightful. Life's just peachy, isn't it? Just little Lucy, the long-haired dachshund. So I'm going to end off, we're coming up to 7 o'clock already, we end off with the last small group of pieces, 3 short pieces for you. Something very interesting I discovered. The music of the Italian composer Lodovico Giustini. If you've never heard of him, he's not a well-known composer, should I say. I'd never heard of this until a few days ago when I discovered his music and I read a little bit more about him. But Mr. Giustini is a very important composer, actually, in terms of the history of piano music, because he lived in Italy and around exactly the same time as Bartolomeo Cristofori. Cristofori, the instrument keeper of the Medici family, was the caretaker of the instruments, and Cristofori is the man credited with inventing the piano, the instrument which we play today. So just to revive this, before we had harpsichords, being Bach and Scarlatti's music would have been written for a harpsichord where a string is plucked. You would press a key and the string would be plucked by a little quill through a mechanism. Cristofori came along and he said, well, I want to create something different. I'm going to create a keyboard that has a small hammer that strikes the string. And when it does this, it means that you can change the sound from very loud to very soft, forte to piano, soft and loud. So this was an instrument that could play soft and loud by merely the way you touched it. This is something that you cannot actually do on a harpsichord. To change the volume and the sound of the harpsichord like an organ, you have to bring out stops, pushing out different stops to bring in different layers of strings into play. So it's not something which is changing just by the way you touch it. And this is what the magic of the piano is. The piano itself was obviously a very early instrument. It was a very primitive form, but this is such a great invention that really signifies a huge number of changes at the time. So Giustini was also at the court, and he is the composer that creates the first music. In 1723 he published this, and Barry's going to bring up the title page. It says something along the lines of sonatas with the possibility of playing on a harpsichord, gravicembalo, which actually is a harpsichord, but forte e piano, soft and loud. He says something about a vulgar way. I think he means in a quite rough way that you can play loud and soft. But this is very important music because this is the first music that we have these indications immediately of loud and soft to be played purely by the way that we touch the instrument. So from these sonatas, he wrote 10 sonatas or so for keyboard. I'm going to play 2 quite beautiful movements, one slow, one fast. Again, I'm creating a few extra little details around it to fill the music out, but I think it's quite charming. Straight after that, going from very early music from 1723 to the music of the Italian pianist Ludovico Einaudi in 2004 with his Una Mattina, or One Morning, completely different style, really exploiting the possibilities of the modern piano. And then I'm going to end off from this early to late with a piece of music that I really think explores all of these aspects. The piano, in terms of its fullest, I think it's one of the most busiest, most active piano pieces I know, and that is the Rachmaninoff Prelude in B flat, opus 23. Well, bringing an end to this evening's in-concert session, that was the Prelude in B-flat from Sega Rachmaninoff, Opus 23. What a fascinating journey I think it's been. As I said, much of this music this evening has been very new to me. Apologies if things went horribly wrong in some of the pieces and you heard notes and chords and scales that sounded a bit out of place, but I think it's a great concept for a program and something that I'll certainly work on and see if I can explore. I hope you've enjoyed the selection of Piano Play, this exploration of the possibilities of the piano, from the joy, the sadness, the melancholy, the exuberance, the brilliance, the earliest piano music, some of the most recent piano music, and the different sounds, qualities, textures, and enlightenment the piano brings to our lives. And I think someone who's also just loving everything the piano brings to her life is little Frida. Hello, Frieds, yes. So that does bring us to the end of the session. Thank you, Barry, for the camera work, technical support. Frida's also very grateful. Thank you, Barry. And thank you to everyone who has been supporting me. Thank you to everyone who sent through messages for our Music Revival 24th birthday, which was last week. And this week, Saturday, I have another exciting program on Saturday evening with the in-concert session. Please join us then. And we look forward to carrying on with our live stream series and our program of concerts along with Frida and with Lucy, who's now determined to Bach. Yes, thanks, Lucy. Look after yourselves, stay well, keep well, stay in touch. Let me know how you're enjoying the sessions. If you're on Facebook, please comment. We are no longer broadcasting the streams on the Music Revival KZN and Cape Classic pages, but certainly on the Christopher Daigen Pianist page, my own personal profile on Facebook, as well as on YouTube and on the Music Revival website. So we're still everywhere to be found. Thank you for your support. Thank you for joining us, and look forward to seeing you next time.